I had heard about Timebank. It's a system that helps people to communicate and help each other without money changing hands. You join the local time bank. It needs to be handled on a computer system for exchanges being recorded. But when you join, you can list the sorts of offers you might be able to make in the community in the way of helping other people to do things. And you always have some needs too, where you would like some help. And so if I, for example, spend 1 hour minding a friend's children, she will credit me 1 hour on the time bank records. And then I can use that credited 1 hour in my account to pay somebody else to do something for me, like fixing the broken fence or whatever. And so it's a matter of people exchanging their abilities and their time to help one another without money changing hands. And that is such an important fact of life. The whole point about things like time banking, it does create relationships that are warm. There's love. You get to love so many people. This is what's so good about living in Lyttelton.
Hi, this is Bruce Lipton, and you're listening to Green Planet FM.
Kia ora, greetings, and welcome to Green Planet FM 104.6. I'm Tim Lynch, and I trust that you are doing well. I invite you to stay with me over the next hour as we discuss and find ways to take care of our unique and magnificent green planet Earth. Many more New Zealanders today are talking among themselves that there has to be a better way for us to live, especially for our collective planetary future. Up and down and across New Zealand, they are slowly but methodically going about building local community, wishing to share at a deeper level values that are expressed from the heart and from a place of honesty and courage. From little villages, districts, towns, to suburbs and cities, farmers' markets seem to be a key nodal point where people can congregate and cross-pollinate news and views of how community can come together so as to become self-reliant and resilient, as well as creatively taking innovation to a new art form. Are you one of these cultural creatives who enjoy meeting people to talk deeply about how we can address the urgent needs within the biosphere of today? I trust that you are, as the following interview I feel will fill you with optimism and, dare I say it, joy, which, as you inherently know, we need to experience far more of it as of this moment. Today from Lyttelton in the South Island, which is just through the tunnel from Christchurch, I have Juliet Adams, and Juliet is a member of one of the most successful cooperative community enterprises in New Zealand called Project Lyttelton. And the website is lyttelton.net.nz. And Project Lyttelton is a non-profit grassroots organisation committing to building sustainable, connected community. They aim to be the change we wish to see in the world. So, kia ora, Juliet.
Kia ora, Tim.
Juliet, I have been to Lyttelton a number of times, and only a couple of weeks ago I was there again, and I ran into you. And what I found with Lyttelton is that there is an energy and a buzz that a lot of people are, because it's a very small community, it's inside like a caldera, I think you would call it, a previous sunken volcano, and it's around the outskirts of it. It's a very, very close community, and when I was there, I just noticed that there were so many things in easy reach. You didn't have to go miles or kilometres in any one direction. Everything was in close proximity. So could you tell our listeners what drew you to Project Lyttelton?
Well, I came to live in Lyttelton in 2007 because both my son and my daughter had come to live here, and had a great life working with my daughter on our family business until the earthquakes. Until the earthquake, I didn't really get to know the community in Lyttelton. I loved being there because of the climate and the beauty, but I didn't know the community because I was always out the back of the shop doing the inward goods management and stuff like that. And then the earthquake happened and the business was gone to ground. find a new life. And I had heard about Timebank. And so I inquired about joining it. And that's when the world opened up for me, because I began to meet local people and talk with them and get to know more about what was going on in the town. And I was amazed to find so much going on in the town. And you're right, it's got boundaries, and therefore it feels a little enclosed and warm. And there's a lot of people who really know each other well, and so there's a lot of interchange and a lot of discussion and a lot of action.
You mentioned Timebank. You see, Timebank is in many ways the elixir of a community when we understand what it's all about. Can you give a little précis as to what it is, please?
Yes, it's a system that helps people to communicate and help each other without money changing hands. You join the local time bank. It needs to be handled on a computer system for exchanges being recorded. But when you join, you can list the sorts of offers you might be able to make in the community in the way of helping other people to do things. And you always have some needs too, where you would like some help. And so if I, for example, spend 1 hour minding a friend's children, she will credit me 1 hour on the Timebank records. And then I can use that credited 1 hour in my account to pay somebody else to do something for me, like fixing the broken fence or whatever. And so it's a matter of people exchanging their abilities and their time to help one another without money changing hands. And that is such an important fact of life, because money is far too dominant in current society, and this is a good way to get out of it.
When I see lots of TV programs, not that I have a TV, but when I see TV programs of people in developing countries of the third world, or say, for example, Syria today or Libya, they are in such a state that a time bank would be a wonderful way to actually start pulling the threads of their localised community together, wouldn't it?
It would. You see, in the olden days, which I can remember when I was a child, people did things for each other without much question. You know, we didn't actually have to go through a system of recording anything. We just did it. And then the world went commercial and industrial, and it's all got out of hand. And now the money in the world is too much a focus in too many people's lives. This brings people back into a relationship with each other that is so much more healthy. Around the world,
yes,
it's making a huge difference.
Yes. Can you extend on that a little more? Because this is really important. It's actually meeting somebody, and you just get to know them, and the more you get to know them, there's lots of good story coming out of them, and then all of a sudden they're an ally and they're supportive, etc.
That's right. When I joined the Time Bank, I really didn't have much idea of what I would be able to contribute. And I didn't actually feel I needed any help at that stage, but I thought it was a good idea to get into it. And so I went along to a meeting of the Time Bank team in Lyttelton and learned more about what was going on. And I found that really quite inspiring, because I learned then that Time Bank was just one of the things going on in Lyttelton that was really good for the community, for people's relationships with each other. When I joined the Time Bank, I thought, well, yeah, maybe I can edit papers that people write or something like that, because I had been an English teacher for most of my working life. But I didn't actually get called on to do anything before I actually had a stroke. Just a few months after the earthquake.
Understandably.
And I was a bit sort of handicapped. And I went to the Time Bank and said, I believe that I can get some help, but I haven't actually earned any hours, so I can't credit anybody to help me. And they said, oh, but Time Bank has a very good system called the Community Treasure Chest. This means that some people put Time Bank credit hours into it. so that it can be used to help people who haven't earned any hours or who aren't even time bank members. So they said, if you want some help, just come to us and you can have the help as a time bank debit, and away you go. So my whole life opened up because I was getting help from a system that was based on people rather than money. And so I was given car rides to the doctor and so on.
Wonderful, because it's another way of sort of paying it forward and just donating and goodwill. And
right.
These are in many ways, these are the glue. Well, this is the glue that keeps a community going. And I know, I felt it when I was there at a number of instances a few weeks ago. I know that it's a tangible feeling of connection.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
And you make friends, and that's so warming.
It is. Well, today we need as many friends as possible, solely because the outside world is quite harsh and quite cold. Mm. And with Project Lyttelton, I mean, they run car boot sales, and there are numerous other initiatives. Can you just cover some of them for people? Because I want you to convey to people what can happen when we, as a small collective of inspired people and individuals, can actually work for the betterment of the whole.
Yes, that's right. Well, there are lots and lots of... Project Lyttelton is full of projects, and one of them that's been going for a long time is the community garden. And this is, I think there are lots and lots of towns in Lyttelton that have community gardens, and they probably all work in a fairly similar way, but you go along and you put in a bit of time working there, and then you can take home some of the veggies or fruit or whatever. And that's been really strong ever since it began. And then there's the garage sale. We have had boot sales in the past, but the garage sale is now such a big thing, and it's operating 4 or 5 days a week, and it's a very large room in a 2-story building, plus extra storage, and it's just so busy because a lot of people are realising you don't have to work hard all your life to keep buying new things to show off. You can make do with things that other people have already used and valued and that are still good. And so that's where I go to buy clothes or anything else I might need, bits of pottery for the kitchen or something. There's a massive amount of stuff which is very, very cheap, but the garage sale does make money.
I hear you very clearly.
Garage sale money can be fed into other projects that don't make money. And so it's a sharing of that resource among all the projects of Project Lyttelton.
I know. I went up to your second hand, I think it's called, your place.
The garage sale.
That garage sale, yes. And I was able to purchase a excellent suitcase, very much like a Samsonite suitcase, got a handle and wheels, and I opened it up and it was, all the insides were perfect. And I asked them how much, and they said $5. And I says, no, I'm sorry, you've got to push the price up. It's too low. And so I gave $20 and they gave me $10 back.
Yes, that's typical. Yes.
Yes.
There's so much good value stuff there.
There certainly is. So I was looking at paying $150 for a new one, $200.
Yeah.
So there we are. It's proved its point for me straight away as soon as I got there. So, yes, it's...
That's one of the things, yes.
Yeah.
And another thing that is very helpful financially for Project Lyttelton is the Saturday Farmers Market, which is now famous. I mean, every Saturday, the official opening hours are from 10 until 1, every Saturday of the year, regardless of weather and holidays and things. But most of the locals have finished their shopping by 10 and they're there just to get around and chat with their friends, you know. It's a very social occasion. And it's always full of visitors from Christchurch or people who live in Christchurch who come to the Lyttelton market to buy their fresh fruit, their veggies, their flowers, their baked food, their meat, although I don't buy much meat. And there is a really happy atmosphere even in spite of bad weather. We do tend to get the easterly blowing along the street where all the market is. And we get rain occasionally too, but most people have good tents above them to shelter you while you're doing your shopping. And it's fresh food. Nearly all of it is local, absolutely local. There's a lot of organic or spray-free food. There's a lot of beautifully baked food. I take along reusable plastic containers, at least 3 every Saturday, to buy food for my lunch that day and for dinner that night and for lunch the next day or two, because you can count on the food to be delicious and healthy and cheap. It's a marvellous place to be. And it makes money, which also helps with other projects. And Project Lyttelton, it feeds back into the system.
Yes, well, I can imagine at the end of a season with all the chutneys and the sauces and the pickles, etc. too, that everybody's put their love into the produce, and so you're taking home a bottled or love in containers. So
that's right.
That's a wonderful thing. And I think the other thing is that the networking is really, really important, where you share and you just get people to let people know what's happening. I mean, I know that you had quite a function some time ago, and you had a big talk around timebanks, and you had a top American official. He inspired a lot of people in America to go into using other ways of transactions. Can you mention a little bit about that?
Would that be the Living Economies Expo?
That's right.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yes, that was inspiring. It was a marvellous event, because there were lots of New Zealand people who already live this kind of life and do these kinds of actions, but there were also Skype calls and talks from people overseas and visitors from overseas who are also working in the area of inspiring people to work on a community basis and a non-money basis, and it really was a marvellous event. It went on for 3 days. It was inspiring. And
the keynote speaker?
Oh, there were several. Golly, now I don't have a list of them here with me.
The main American, somebody Khan, is it?
Oh, no, Edgar Khan was at a different event. Oh, no, sorry, he wasn't at that one.
Oh, okay.
He was at a previous event that was a little earlier, I think about a year before.
I see, okay. What's his name again?
Edgar Khan.
And he was...
He wrote the book called No More Throwaway People, which was the beginning of time banking.
Thank you.
He called it time dollars in America.
Yes.
And, yes, he was at a previous event about a year before. Sorry, I got confused. We have so many great events here.
Well, isn't it lovely? Yes, because, again, these are the really important threads for community to let people know that we can actually together have a happy life. I think this is one of the wonderful things. You go home at the end of the day after having worked with your localised community, and you can go to bed happy knowing that you're connected over a far wider area, whereas in some of the cities today, as we know, people don't know their neighbours next door, and they go into their home and they're a stranger in their own house.
Yes. No, that's the whole point about things like time banking. It does create relationships that are warm. There's love. You get to love so many people. This is what's so good about living in Lyttelton. But I know that there are time bank areas in districts in cities too, suburbs of cities, you know?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Anything can happen in a suburb of a city. It doesn't have to be an enclosed community like this one.
Yes. Are you allowed to mention what's happening in Christchurch? That they're going to start a big initiative of time banks?
Well, there are already several time banks there.
Yes, I hear that the Christchurch Council has made a big contribution to this in the last few weeks.
I'm afraid I don't know any of the detail of that. All I know is that they do support time bank organisations, yes.
I see. Okay. No, I just heard that there's $100,000 to be spent over 2 years.
Well, I know that Project Lyttelton has just received a big contribution from the City Council.
That could be it.
It could be it. Not just for Time Bank, but for Project Lyttelton. This sort of thing's going on all over the country, actually. City Council's getting into gear and doing great things for people. who are working on community development.
I hear you. I know that of the 50 community gardens in Auckland now has increased to 70 community gardens.
That would be right, yes.
And I see overseas they're really looking at expanding the numbers in certain countries to huge numbers of areas within the city.
People getting back to ground level again.
That's
Instead
right.
of relying on supermarkets, they grow their own food and they're healthier.
Far healthier.
City Council one, I've just found it. It's called the Strengthening Communities Fund. And it can be used, you can choose either to use it to pay wages of people who are organising things, or you can use it to initiate new projects. It's the same sort of thing that's happening in Carterton.
Oh, good.
Carterton's got big links for me because the first year and a bit of my married life was spent in Carterton. And then after I joined the Time Bank here in Lyttelton, that was in 2011, after the earthquakes, I met a woman from Carterton whose name is Helen Dew.
Yes, Helen.
And she is a member of the Living Economies organisation that also is where Margaret Jeffries in Lyttelton belongs. And Helen in Carterton and Margaret in Lyttelton are the sort of kick-starters who get things going, you know? I mean, Margaret Jeffries in Lyttelton was the person who went together with Helen to, I think it was Ithaca, New York.
Yes.
And learned about Time Bank over there and brought it back to New Zealand. That's how it started in New Zealand. And Helen in Carterton is still going on developing action there. Well, she's part of the community that develops action. And I've just heard that they're getting government support from the community-led development program. And again, they're getting funding for a 2-year period to launch projects that will benefit the community. It's so good that councils and governments are now actively, noticeably supporting community groups to get on and improve the lives of the citizens in those communities. It's just heartwarming.
Yes.
Here's a feeling that the government was up there and didn't care about us, you know. Now they're caring.
Yes, well, the localisation of all community events, when their people are connected, they're more healthier. So if they're healthier, they're not going to get depressed or they're not going to turn to drink or drugs. All this is part of getting people to participate in the world and have a good life.
And have warm relationships with people around them.
Very much so. Now, you've got minimising of waste and creating ways to reuse, reduce and recycle. Can you mention a little bit about this? Because, as we know, the Pacific gyre in the North Pacific, we've got one out in Tahiti, but they're all around our planet and they're just full of breaking down rubbish.
Yes. Well, there are two aspects here in Lyttelton. One is our Waste Matters project, part of Project Lyttelton. And the most visible part of their action is on the Saturday markets. You will see there is a stand where you can borrow a cup, take it away, fill it up with a coffee or soup or whatever, and then bring it back, and one of the staff will wash it at the end of the day. And there are plates and knives and forks, so you can really enjoy the local food and not have to worry about throwing anything in the rubbish bin and not having to wash it yourself either.
You see, this is fantastic. It's so simple, and yet it works.
But somebody does the work, but that's all right. Most of us are volunteers, you know. That's what Project Lyttelton has, a large number of volunteers who do this work for love, you know.
Yes.
They want to make a difference.
Yeah. Volunteers are the magic. That is part of the glue.
My whole life with Project Lyttelton since 2011 has been as a volunteer.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah.
I love it. So, it's so rewarding.
It's better to give than to get or to take.
Yes.
It's really interesting. I enjoy being part of a team because happiness is infectious.
Mm-hmm. It is.
So you reuse, reduce and recycle. And have you got a good outreach there? Is there, I mean, no doubt with Christchurch and the tragedy of the earthquake, there's been a lot of different initiatives happening right across the city because everybody realised we had to depend on each other.
Yes, that's right. Well, that's the kind of atmosphere that is here in so many aspects. There are some people who don't want to join in with that kind of thing. You know, they'd rather make money and focus on that. But the majority of people here interact in helpful ways, in all sorts of ways. We have lots of action going on now on Project Lyttelton with events that bring people together, festivals and creative workshops and things like that, where people learn and enjoy learning things together and have fun together several times a year. It's a big part of life here.
Well, I like the idea of festivals because there's singing and there's dancing and there's music and, as you know, the best of food.
Yes.
This, again, is imperative. And can you name a number of the other South Island communities that are involved with doing community like you are, maybe on a smaller scale, but it's just to allow people who may be listening might find out that somebody in Oamaru or somebody out at Tekapo.
I don't know very many. I know Ashburton is strong. Diamond Harbour, across the harbour from here, is doing a lot of development. There are areas in Christchurch where there are time banks which sort of intend to encourage this kind of thing, like the Bridge to Rocks time banks in Sumner and the New Brighton time banks. They all start off as time bank organisations, but they spread their activities more widely as they go. Other South Island ones I'm not familiar with. Not the right person to ask that question.
I see, yes, because Golden Bay...
Yeah.
And Tākaka.
In there, yes.
And I think Motueka and also Nelson.
Yes,
and
they have a reputation for this, that's true.
That's right.
And in the North Island, years ago, after the first time bank hui here, we went up to Raglan.
Oh, yes.
And for another time bank hui, and my word, that's an inspiring place. I can still see in my mind their extreme zero waste site where they do all that work. It's a fascinating thing to look at.
Thank you. Yes, I did an interview many, many years right at the start, and I haven't got that interview sadly up on the website. So it means I'm going to have to either go down and see them and get an interview, because they are a very small group who are extremely devoted.
That's right.
And so yes, and I think there's a Hokianga group as well, and
all over the country, really.
Yes. Well, I know that Annalise Hall,
yes.
She has written about some of these, and I'd dearly like to get Annalise back and do another interview on the whole country.
Well, she's living in Diamond Harbour now, just across the water from here.
Okay. Well, next time I'm down, and I know that my gold card I can get across on the ferry.
Ah, isn't that good?
That is very good, and a lot of people may not know what a gold card is.
I know.
I know, but there's a lot of overseas people listening to programs like this. And so that when a New Zealander gets to 65, not only do we get a free pension from the government, we also get a gold card which allows us transport on buses and boats and etc., particularly at non-peak hours.
That's right.
It's all free. So this is wonderful.
And that's so good. It's so good.
It is.
It creates a much healthier climate, much less paid transport rushing around with carrying one person each all the time.
That's right, and travelling on a bus is always an eye-opener, and you can meet friends again. I mean,
exactly.
My life is based around synchronicity, and you can never tell whom you may meet. Yes. Now, you also have an area where people who belong to Project Lyttelton can have free use, or they can pay a certain amount of money to use Bertie the truck. Now,
Bertie is very useful.
That's right. Now, so you've got what you call a localised truck that people can put into the kitty and use it if they need a fridge moved or if they need to come compost or whatever.
Yes, Bertie the truck is used, of course, for setting up and taking down the Saturday market. That's his main job of the week. But also, one that I'm involved with is the weekly fruit and vegetable delivery. He's driven into town to a site there where other community groups go on Wednesdays and pick up crates and crates of fruit and vegetables mixed. You know, each crate's the same, or you can get a $12 crate or a $6 crate, according to the amount you want. And then Bertie delivers the load of crates back to us at the recreation centre, where Project now does a lot of its work. And then the people who have ordered their fruit and vegetables for that week come along. They've already paid online, most of them. Some of them pay cash a week ahead. And they bring along a bag and they empty their crate into their bag and take it away, and it's fresh, local, delicious-looking fruit and vegetables, depending on what's on season at the moment. And so much cheaper than going to a supermarket.
There we go.
That's one of his jobs.
Yes. You can also even hire computers, is that correct?
That's something I don't know about. I've never needed to hire one.
I see, no, because I've been up on your site, and there's all sorts. There's even a data projector, so that if you wanted to do a slideshow or something like that, you can actually hire one from your own
yes.
people, which is really good.
So, too, but I have one for myself for the Lift Library, because I show films 3 times a month now, or film collections, yeah.
Good.
And I use the data projector that is part of the Lift Library gear.
Okay, now we want to get back to the library, because, you see, I am a keen follower of what libraries do, and as I mentioned just maybe yesterday to you, we once had the Library of Alexandria in Egypt.
Yes.
Over 2,000 years ago, and this is where profound information, it went back deep into the Egyptian, deep into Greece. All this information was in this fantastic library, and it was deliberately burnt down by, shall we say, a shadowy presence. And it basically decapitated the knowledge of the day, and we are still recovering from the fact that this knowledge would be far, it would have empowered us so much more today.
Right.
And so we've been struggling. And then the next extension of this is the fact is that, particularly in the West, is that the libraries across, say, New Zealand, but you see them in America and in England and, well, Europe in particular, but libraries are the fountain of knowledge. And we pay our rates, and we have these very good libraries. I mean, the Auckland Library is a wonderful repository of information that you can just tap into now from home, check out if a book's there, and then with a few keystrokes, you can get that book sent to you if you can't actually get to the library.
Yes, that's right. And it's so important, I think, for people to actually hold a book in their hands and read it, rather than simply reading everything online or on your phone. A real book.
I agree.
Gives you the chance to dip in and out when you want it, when it suits you. It gives you the chance to go back and reread something that's important. Yeah, I think you gain more from reading a real book. And that's one of the reasons why I got going with this library.
Well, I looked at your library the other day, and you have some very, very important books.
Ah, yes.
And I'm wanting you to be able to go through at least 5 or 6 or even a couple more of the top authors and the name of their books, so that listeners can track and either get that book or go up onto the net and see where that person, what they're currently doing, because your little library there, I instantly knew that if I went there, there would be so much information that would help me grow, not only in understanding the outside world, but also about who I am and what I'm capable of doing. And so can I leave it to you now to mention some of the real key books, please, Juliet? I'm speaking with Juliet Adams of Project Lyttelton. Their website, which I encourage all to look at, is lyttelton.net.nz. lyttelton.net.nz.
Yeah, well, we've got over 600 books, plus DVDs and magazines. And I looked through my list, because the library is no longer in my home. It's now at the recreation centre, where it's got much easier access for the public. And there are so many books that I wanted to talk about today, but I've chosen just a few. One of them I think is very important, and we mentioned him before, Edgar Kahn, the man who started time banking. He wrote a book called No More Throwaway People, because when he suddenly had a heart problem and he thought he might not survive in a very active sort of life, he was very concerned about the fact that there are lots of people who feel they can't work for a living, but they don't want to feel wasted. And he started thinking about other ways in which people could contribute to their community without having to be paid to do it. And that's how his whole idea of time dollars or time banking came into action. And it developed all over America. And then Margaret Jeffries and Helen Dew went there and learned about it and brought it back here and started it here. And so I think that his ideas of productive action, rewarding oneself with satisfaction, but also helping other people without money changing hands, is a very, very important aspect that we need to develop even more in life. Fortunately, time banks are spread all over the world, and they're still spreading, and that's one of the best things that's come out of a book that I know.
Excellent, yes.
And then another one that I read, when I mentioned before, didn't I, that after the earthquakes I had a stroke and I joined Time Bank and got help there. And it was suggested to me that a way in which I could earn some hours to be able to credit other people with their help was to read some books that Project Lyttelton already had and write some summaries of them, because most of the people working in Project Lyttelton were so busy doing the work that they didn't have time to read. So I wrote a summary of that one. I wrote one of a book called Blessed Unrest.
I was typing that right now by Paul Hawken.
By Paul Hawken.
Yeah.
He wrote it in 2007, but it's still valid now.
Yes.
So many of the books in the Lift Library have got information that when we look back now to when it was written, it was true then, some of it is still true now, some of it you can see how the changes that they talked about as being necessary have been happening, and it's so encouraging. And Paul Hawken's book, called Blessed Unrest, was subtitled How the Largest Movement in the World Came into Being and Why No One Saw It Coming.
Yes.
And basically he's talking about how people working at ground level on things like climate change and poverty and deforestation and conservation and human rights and hunger, people working at basic level, often as volunteers, are making changes and building up a series of movements around the world that are working hard and succeeding in getting things right in the world. They've still got a big battle, you know. One of my favourite sayings that I used on placards in my marches was, "We want democracy, not corporatocracy." Because corporatocracy, terrible word, is a major part of the problems of the world that we face. And so a lot of the books in Lift Library are about how we can make changes at ground level instead of relying on somebody up there who doesn't want to help improve things. So this book's all about that kind of action, the ground level action, getting social justice, environmental justice and so on, improving the world as a whole. It was really inspiring, that book. That's really why I got going and started reading a lot more stuff and getting into action.
Very good. You've got plenty more?
Oh, yes. My daughter went to Ithaca, New York, a couple of years ago to see a friend who was working at Cornell University, and she came back with stuff from Ithaca, including a book called Choosing a Sustainable Future, Ideas and Inspiration from Ithaca, New York, written by Liz Walker. And you know, our image of America is often rather negative, but this is one of the most positive books I've read, because it tells you what's going on in this city where they put the ideas of their First Nations ahead of a lot of others, which we could be doing with Maori.
Okay, yes.
And talks about things like a local food culture and green energy and smart use of transportation alternatives and educating for a sustainable future and addressing racism and turning waste into gold and all sorts. It's a marvellous book because it's so positive. It shows you that a city can make positive changes to benefit its citizens rather than just benefit a corporation.
Oh, yes, the corporates have got, as we know, they get us worked up. Well, one of the things, too, may I mention, you talk sustainability, and it was really interesting because Jacinda, our Prime Minister, used the word regenerative.
Yes, that's a very big feature in several of the books that I've got.
Good.
I'm going to mention it in one later, yeah.
Okay, I'll let you go on.
Yeah. Now, another one, I thought we ought to have some New Zealand books too, you know. Healthy Money, Healthy Planet. This is written by Deirdre Kent.
Yes.
Who is a local,
yes.
Well, North Island.
Yes.
And involved in living economies, and was a major speaker at the Living Economies Expo that we had here last year. And this book was written quite a while ago, but it describes very well, and you don't have to be an expert in economics to understand it, or finance, but she explains how our money system is wrong. That part of the book is called Sick Money. And it tells you what's gone wrong with our money systems. And most people can understand it pretty readily. There are lots of aspects. And then healthy money, all the better ways to handle our exchanges with one another. And so the sorts of things that we've mentioned already, like time bank and so on, are part of that picture. And local currencies, you know, there was even thought of Ralph Manji and the Christchurch City Council starting up a local currency. It's quietened down, unfortunately, but I'd love to see it going. So she's got her theme is developing sustainability through new money systems. And she's written another book since then, which I haven't got at the moment. Our members got it out, but that's another good one. Then I want to get on to one that regenerative agriculture is a big part of. It's a book. It's another American one, but it's written by Paul Hawken. I mentioned him before with Blessed Unrest. This is a big book. It'll take you a while to read it, but you dip in and out. It's called Drawdown, the most comprehensive plan ever proposed to reverse global warming. Now, he didn't write it, he edited it. He had a team of 300 people all around the world, experts in their fields, collecting information and providing it for the book about realistic solutions to climate change, most of which are already being operated in different parts of the world, but could be operated more and should be more in order to bring down our rate of emissions causing climate change. But not only that, making a healthier world, especially in matters like food production and living situations. And he's got 100 different methods that are being used in different places that will improve our world. The topics are energy and food, women and girls, buildings and cities, land use, transport, materials, and coming attractions, new ideas that are being brought into use now. But I learned so much dipping in and out of this book, which is beautifully illustrated and written. I learned so much about, for example, intensive silvopasture. I had never heard of that term before, but it's the idea where you're growing trees and food on your land, but you also raise your animals among them. And the animals eat from what you are growing, and then they feed what you are growing. And so it's a circular system of food production, including for those who want to eat animals, but I don't want to eat animals. But there are so many practical, sensible ideas. One of them is family planning should be a major priority so that we don't keep on bursting the world's population and making everything much more difficult to manage.
Most definitely. Well, you see, the population explosion is the elephant in the room.
Yes.
And yet there's not one leader on the face of this planet.
Well, who wants to work on it?
That's right. China has, to a large degree, but they realise that they're causing problems, so they're allowing 2 children now. But still, the Chinese, at least they're onto it, whereas in the West, it's anything goes.
That's right. That's right. And unfortunately, it's most of the thinking people who are having fewer children.
I hear you very clearly too, and this is it's very un-PC to talk about this, solely because I know that, I worked in Parimoremo, the maximum security prison here in Auckland, and I was 8 electronic doors deep in the system, and most of those guys who are there don't even know where babies come from, and because if you find out how many children they've actually fathered, who are now dependent on the state, plus the mother, the knock-on effect from not being educated and having loving parenting right from the word go.
That's right. This is one of the major areas of need in the whole world, but especially, I think, in the Western society.
Yeah, Western society, because of, again, this is where corporations and media, and they're telling everybody to go out if it feels good. Go and do it, man. Experiment.
Spend money and buy products.
And don't be responsible. With a bit of luck, you'll be able to sneak out somehow. And so we could go right into this, because this is where the Christian church has fallen flat on its face recently, because it's lost the plot as well. And so there's a number of challenges that have come to meet us.
Yes.
And I definitely feel it's getting back to community, getting back to families, getting out to mum and dad and the kids and Nana and Granddad, very close and extended family.
That's right. And that brings me to another book that I've got in mind. You know, I've got lots of topics in the library, but they're all about let's do things better, you know.
Yes.
But I also have a collection of books for children about how they can do things better too. But the one I want to tell you about is a local book that was published. I don't know whether you've heard of She Chocolate, made in Governor's Bay.
No, they haven't yet.
Delicious chocolate, and it's healthy, and I can get sugar-free chocolate there. After the earthquake, they organised a double-decker red bus to be brought out from England. And they went round delivering their chocolate to people who were still suffering madly from the earthquakes. And one of the organisers in that shop wrote a little book for children called Ruby Red, The Chocolate Bus and the Earthquake. The author is Debs Anna, and it was illustrated by Emma Jopling. And it's a delightful little book for children to read or have read to them about this bus being brought out, arriving and being taken to Governor's Bay, where the chocolate factory is, and loaded up with chocolate and then driven around where there were children. And little children came to this amazing double-decker red bus and were very interested and had conversations with the bus. And I'll just read a little bit from near the end of the story. The bus's name is Ruby. And it's all about the Earth Mother and the earthquake. I'll just read the last little bit. Lastly, a girl with red hair and freckles came to join them. She held her little sister's hand. Ruby, why did the Earth Mother wake us up in the middle of the night like that? She is reminding us to love each other and all the animals, to love the earth, to live as one family. She is calling to us. And the Earth Mother rumbled and shook, and Ruby rocked. And the girls jumped on the bus. Ruby tooted, "Feel your big glowing hearts. See how big they are. When you can feel your big heart, why be afraid?" The children felt inside their bodies. Ruby was right. There was a beautiful, warm glow. They began to feel brave and strong. Ruby could feel it too. She smiled. She knew. And then all the little children were told to go to the cupboard at the back of the bus and get their chocolate. And I think that book's important because it's emphasising the value of love when you're going through a terribly difficult situation. And even when you're not going through a terrible situation, it's important. I really love that book. In fact, I love most of the books in the library, although some are a bit too hard to read. they all inspire
Yes, well, there's
action.
There's lots of good messages that we can continue to get out. And I mean, children they are it. As far as I'm concerned, I spend a lot of time around children. And what I like about them is you look at them and their eyes still have that sparkle. They've still got plenty of up and go, and they haven't.
Yes.
They haven't turned. When I say to a lot of my adult friends when there's kids around or even mums and dads, I say, you know what? There's only one problem with children, and it's one. The greatest problems is that they end up becoming adults.
Oh, yes.
And that's because I don't want cynicism to come into the game plan, but there's a lot of adults get burnt out in the journey. And what I say also is I say to children, I say, make sure that your inner candle burns really, really brightly.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know what happens, Juliet? They all lighten up.
Yes.
There is something inside them that inherently knows that when I say that they have got an inner candle and it has to be bright, that there is this inner glow at soul level. There's another level of awareness.
And this is the most important thing.
Yes. Yeah, this is fantastic. Now, we've got 5 more minutes to go. So I just want to just ask, is there, what are the highlights? What is it that you would recommend for somebody who wants to be more connected to community?
Join a time bank is one way, if you can find one nearby. Or probably if you go to a library anywhere, you will meet people who also have good values.
Very good.
So chatting with people who find there could well be helpful too.
Well, health food shops could help on that. Now, you've got one. Have you not got a little
a co-op?
Co-op there.
Yes, that's a great thing also in this town. It's owned by the local citizens who have all put shares into it. That's the ownership. It's called the Harbour Co-op, and it's health food. It's organic food, and I work there as a volunteer one afternoon a week too when I'm not at the library, and it's emotionally healthy as well as providing physical health for your body, because it's staffed by and managed by and visited by people who care about a healthy world and healthy relationships. And so you do tend to meet the right people there. And they sell also books and magazines that are about improving the health of our bodies and our minds and our society. Very helpful. Very
much. And then when I was in Lyttelton, I also saw that you've got close on, 800 members of your time bank. Can you can you expand on that a little bit more? 800 members?
I don't know the up-to-date figure because we're just producing our annual reports at the moment, actually. But it would be at least that many, yes. They're not all necessarily active all the time, but on the other hand, they will be getting their regular newsletters about what's going on in the time bank for the whole of the Lyttelton area. They can read that online, just recent updates of what's been going on and requests and offers that are up to date, and a nice recipe for some lovely food as well. And so I think that's one of the biggest ways of people connecting with one another.
And a newsletter. You have a newsletter that goes out so that...
The Lyttelton Review. Oh, you mean mine? The Lift Library, I have a newsletter, which goes out weekly to all its members. We've got a couple of hundred members now. But there's the Lyttelton Review, which goes out to the whole Lyttelton area, online if you want it, or a printed version. That's usually once a fortnight, and that's telling you about... good news. You know, I get so sick of the main media, the newspapers, TV, radio, too much bad news. And so it's great to read good news in a local publication with things that are being achieved in the community, people who are doing good stuff. We need more of that, I reckon.
Most definitely. Yes. Well, I mean, you've also, I think, and I've got it here sometimes. No, I thought I had it on my computer here, but I'd have to search through it. Talking about, I mean, there's love in the community that you're involved in, and this word love is so important, and it's a word that men have more difficulty expressing. Women can let it out far more easily, but we just have to realise that when we are among our friends that we've most probably just met in many cases, we realise that together we can achieve a lot.
That's right. That's right. And what I notice in Lyttelton is, walking along the street, lots of people smile at each other and nod and say hello or even stop and chat, which is so different from living in the middle of a city.
I hear you. And so, well, one last little story. Can you tell us a little story or vignette?
I think starting up the Lift Library and encouraging other people to read books about better ways to live in our world has brought me many friends with whom I can have really rewarding and warm and loving conversations. I think encouraging people to share ideas about a better world brings more positivity. We don't need to spend time talking about what's wrong. We talk about what's going right. And that's what makes me happiest in my life.
Makes me happy too.
Yes.
Juliet, thank you very much for wanting to tell listeners all about the good things that are happening in your lovely little community, nestled in that caldera, and where people can just walk very easily to different areas.
Yes.
I think that's a real good one.
It is. It is good.
Yeah. And so I'm just wishing to say thank you so much. I give my blessings to Margaret Jeffries, for what she's also doing there. But as you, and as she has said before, she said it's about everybody, and it's about how we just participate to make sure that the moment gets better all the time.
That's exactly right. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Okay then. And I'll just put in there that it's lyttelton.net.nz. So thank you once again, Juliet.
You're most welcome. Thank you for the great work you're doing, Tim.
Oh, I appreciate your lovely comments. Thank you. I can assure you, you'll be so profoundly bursting with light.
Thank you.
Yeah. So there's a lot of magic in the world.
Yes. Thank goodness.
And I'm so glad. That was Juliet Adams of Project Lyttelton, lytteltonnet.nz. Decide to network. Use every letter you write, every conversation you have, every meeting you attend, every email you send. And remember, even Facebook. To tweet and to express your fundamental beliefs and dreams. Affirm to others the vision of the world you want. Network through thought, network through action, network through love, network through the spirit. You are the centre of a network. You are the centre of the world. You are a free, immensely powerful source of life and goodness. Affirm it, spread it, radiate it. Think day and night about it, and you will see a miracle happen. The greatness of your own life in a world of big powers, media and monopolies, but of 7.6 billion individuals, networking is the new freedom, the new democracy, a new transparency, and a new form of wholeness and happiness. This originated by Dr. Robert Muller, Chancellor of the World Peace University in Costa Rica, Central America. I invite you to be able to come to greenplanetfm.com, where we have over 400 interviews in our database, which you can readily download and listen to. to be able to inspire yourself to become the change you want to see in the world and become involved in caring for your children and grandchildren's future. We are also on Facebook, on Green Planet FM and ourplanet.org. Please come and love us. This is Tim Lynch.
And or Lisa Eyre.
And Liz Gunn.
In the spirit of Aroha